The next presentation here is Impero and the company's CEO Rikke Stampe-Skov and CFO Morten Lehmann Nielsen. We are looking forward to hear more about the compliance and the market drivers as well as your growth outlook. So with that, I will hand over the call to you, Rikke and Morten.
Thank you very much, Kasper. If we could please have the next slide. As briefly mentioned, and thank you for the invitation, first of all, we're presenting today, Morten and I. Morten is our CFO, I'm the CEO of Impero, and we're very pleased to be here and tell a little bit about our outlook and the market drivers that we see for Impero. Next slide, please. A little bit about Impero before we dive into that. We're a business-to-business software as a service company founded in Denmark back in 2013, and we're mainly operating in Northwestern Europe. We are helping customers making trust or gaining trust and showing transparency and helping them on their compliance journeys. In essence, this is about knowing your risks, being able to set up the relevant controls to mitigate your risk, being able to document what you're doing, and of course being able to report on it in a very complex environment. We help companies that are global, complex companies, but also smaller niche players, especially within industries where you see a certain level of regulation. We'll come back to our focus areas, but we're mainly working within the tax and finance domains and increasingly also in ESG. That is really where we see a really rapid development currently. So companies such as Maersk, Volkswagen, Siemens that you see here, and we work along with partners. I'll dive a bit more into that, but mainly the big four partners and other global accounting firms that are working with us to implement Impero with these large customers. Next slide, please. A little bit about our go-to-market strategy. Three different ways for us to generate annual recurring revenue, which is the metric that we are very focused on. So one thing is teaming up with partners, and as I just mentioned, it can be the big fours, so PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, etc. And it can also be other accounting specialists, for instance, such as SaaS, that's also a global accounting firm and audit firm, but it could also be more local players such as Basico in Denmark that we're working with here in the local market. They are a really good entry point for us in new markets, but also they secure our customers in being able to implement Impero to serve their global purposes in terms of knowing the different compliance regimes and also knowing what's relevant to know in different market areas. So we work with them very closely, and looking at 2022, they delivered approximately half of our growth in 22. We've been working with them as go-to-market partners and for implementation support for a number of years, and we're expanding that now, and I'll come back to that when we talk about the market drivers and the focus areas for 23 and onwards. Then we have the direct sales channel where we generate our leads and we have the ability to go to a broader variety of customers. It also includes that we have acquired some customers from PwC and Deloitte when they have closed down their in-house solutions. And this is a channel that for 2022 also delivered approximately half of our growth. Then we have the bottom part of the slide with the expansion on existing customers. So we have a pretty good track record of being able to, first of all, maintain our customers so they stay with us or retain them, but also to encourage our customers in expanding the use of Impero into, it could be new geographies or new compliance areas and new areas in the organizations where we see this possibility for expanding, saying we go in the tax area, we expand into finance, into ESG, etc. So a net revenue retention rate of 112% in 2022. And we will dive a little bit more into the SaaS metrics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rikke. And as Rikke just said, we had our net revenue retention of 112%. That was based on an uplift on existing customers of 17% and a churn of 4% in 2022. And in 2022, even though we had a very busy year, we ended the year slightly below the original anticipations on ARR. So we delivered a growth of 33%, as we had a year where we experienced longer decision-making processes, particularly in our important German markets. So still a decent growth, but not what we originally aimed for. If we look at the average revenue per account, we saw a slight increase in 2022 from 160,000 per account to 168. And we saw a small decrease in the ARR for the first 12 months, which is of course relevant when we look at the cost for bringing or onboard a new customer, where we in total saw an increase in the customer acquisition cost, which there is two elements to that. One is that we have done some quite substantial investments in our commercial part of the organization. The other explanation is back to, as I said before, we did not meet our original target, so we onboarded slightly fewer customers than anticipated, and thereby also negatively impacting our customer acquisition cost. We do expect that during 2023 that we will improve this number, despite that we are continuing to invest in the commercial part of the organization. Looking at our revenue split per region, then we see that Denmark is still the most substantial part of our revenue, but it is decreasing. We are seeing that other areas are increasing, for instance, UK and rest of the world. We welcomed new customers in Singapore and Greenland. We saw a nice increase from a US-based customer also in 2022. So we are becoming less dependent on the Danish market and are growing in the areas where we put our focus. And next slide, please. Looking at our outlook going into 2023, I just briefly want to mention that we changed our ARR methodology. So from up until 2022, we used a methodology where we included parts of our contracted ARR, whereas from 1st of January 2023, our reporting will only be based on what we call, or what's generally referred to as live ARR, where we only focus on revenue that is, or ARR that is recognized as revenue. If you want to know more about that, please take a look at our annual report, or feel free to reach out to us, and we will be happy to help you get a better understanding of the different methodologies. Based on the new methodology, we expect to grow our ARR between 28 and 46% compared to 2022. So in a range of 29 to 33 million. We expect at the same time to improve our EBITDA from -17 in 2022 to a range between -13 to -11 in 2023. It's based on of course, on the assumptions that we're able to retain and attract more partners, that we can keep the strong commercial and technical team that we have today, and that we can grow it. And also an important element is the timing of when the revenue recognition takes place. So it does make a difference whether or when the assigned contracts will start. And then, of course, also we base our outlook on the current geopolitical state. So if there's substantial changes to that, that could, of course, also impact us negatively. Looking at our historical growth, we have delivered in the past 4 years a compounded annual growth of 47%. And it also is reflected in our expectations in 2023. Yeah,
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
Moving to a look at the market drivers that we're looking into. We've tried to group them into these 6 different areas that we will touch briefly upon. So first of all, of course, increasing regulatory requirements. A lot of companies are aware of the NIS2 new regulation that is coming. We've seen new ESG regulation coming, especially relevant for the EU, where we will see all listed companies with more than 500 employees having to implement an audited ESG framework. That's new to a lot of companies, and that's certainly a driver for a company like ours. Then there's also the increased scrutiny from stakeholders, investors, shareholders, etc., where we also regulators, where we really want to see people do the right thing. And we also see the companies, that's the other side of the coin, so to speak, handling their reputation, because it is really, really expensive for a company to get all the bad media that comes with not living up to the requirements that are set by the larger society. What we also see is with the emerging SME market is a spillover effect. So this often starts with the large companies. That is also the case for ESG, where we start with these companies with more than 500 employees who needs to be audited in 24. In 25, you will see that go down to companies with 250 employees, etc., etc. This goes for many different areas where we start out with the big ones and then it kind of drizzles down to the smaller companies. We also see this in Germany on the tax control frameworks, where we see a much bigger demand from somewhat smaller companies in the market, still considered rather large companies in Denmark, where we're going to market with a new solution with KPMG that I will come back to briefly. Then there's the complexity. So we see organizations change, they are global. You see now we have ESG requirements in EU, we have other requirements in other areas. For these companies to actually navigate this complexity and not doing that by hand-holding Excel or hoping to be able to update your SAP environment like this, then we definitely see there's a need for a player that's much faster, easier to implement and to adjust to this increasing complexity in the larger society. Then, of course, and that could be for the CFO, there's a very high focus on efficiency and cost reductions or cost avoidance. So cost avoidance meaning also making sure that you don't get fined, for instance, if you are not adhering to certain regulations, but especially really working on how can you do this as efficiently as possible. How can you be faster in closing your books? How can you make your audits easier? How can you also make it easier to retain the talent you have in your organization? And how can you, with the increased price on money, actually also make sure that you have the cost reductions in place? Then there's the peace of mind, or you can say avoid being kept awake at night. So really knowing that you're doing your utmost to keep on top of things. So that goes for boards, that goes for executive teams, but it actually also goes for every employee who knows that, oh, I should have done this, but I forgot to do that, and now what am I going to do tomorrow, etc., etc. Taking the stress out of things, giving peace of mind to the organizations is actually also a market driver for us. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and actually, if we look at Impero and how we see the market for the GSC solutions or software-based GSC solution that we're offering, then we divided it here into three simplified areas.
Yeah.
That where we can look at. You have on the bar to the left, you have the level of integration, and in the horizontal chart you have the complexity, and you can start with applying an office suite. It could be Excel, it could be Outlook, where you kind of implement some level of controls. It's easy because you have the solution at hand. when you grow or the complexity grows, or when employees quit or change job, whatever happens, then it becomes kind of more time-consuming to maintain. There's a hassle. It's the risk that errors are made increases, and you have the lack of scalability. So it's probably a good place to start for many companies, but as you grow and as the requirements around you grow, then the solutions often become obsolete. Then we have on the right side, we have the integrated ERP suites. It could be something like SAP, and they have really nice solutions that also help you with the GRC requirements. But it's often tailored. It's integrated enterprise solutions that comes with a high cost, with less flexibility when there's suddenly changes in the requirements, or there's last minute updates to what's required from CSRD in EU and so forth. And it's the longer implementation time that's also often. So it's a big decision to make. It's also an issue for companies that has scattered ERP landscape where they have different solutions, and companies doing a lot of acquisitions or being working in a dynamic environment. And that's where we see that actually we're in a sweet spot right now, because what we're able to offer is that we are offering a cost-efficient, flexible, audible, and a scalable solution that's very easy to use. It may choosing a player like Impero may come with a cost that the breadth that we are offering is probably better in the fully integrated ERP suite that you could get, but we can get you started fast, and we are also able to actually follow the tendencies that you see in the market to adapt our solution in much faster, so that you're actually able to stay compliant, and also that it's a solution that you can offer to all your subsidiaries around the world, not dependent on which ERP system they are running. So that's actually why we are able to come with an offering where there is a big demand, even for large, complex organizations.
That is what we call the competitive landscape simplified. Kasper, can we have next slide, please? So a glance at the focus areas that of course leads back to the market drivers. We have a very strong focus on collaborating with our partners within financial compliance. One of the top things that any analysis you might read, whether it's from Basico and it's based out of Denmark, or if it's Deloitte Global CFO survey, what's on the mind of the CFOs is automation, gaining the efficiencies that you can gain from this. This is where we have a number of really strong quotes on this and strong cases where we see that we can really help the companies focus on what's most important and take time out of their monthly, quarterly, yearly processes in terms of their financial compliance. Then there is the collaboration with KPMG in Germany on content that we have also mentioned in our annual report. So we go to market early April with a content-based solution for various areas within tax, where they can pick and choose what area they want to start with and how they want to expand over time, going into different tax processes. And this is a starting point for us on a new journey, really expanding into a new market area where alone for the tax control framework in the middle market, we have approximately 15,000 customers to target in Germany. Then there's ESG, and I know, Kasper, if we were not, we would expect some questions from you if not covering this anyway. First of all, we have customers that have chosen their current Impero environment to build their ESG controls. And that comes within industries such as the chemical industry, construction industry, building materials, service, FMCG, so different areas where we've seen customers applying Impero for ESG. We're also working with partners on setting up a solution closer to the one with KPMG in Germany for ESG, so helping the customers take the next huge steps in this area. It is a pretty immature area, and it's not super hard to set up some standardized framework that the customers can start working from, but we are dealing with a rather scattered picture of how this is organized in the organization. And you have to think of this like, okay, what is our energy consumption? What is the number of underrepresented gender in the management team? How are we doing on injuries on our, platforms in the at sea? Or so it's really scattered picture, and you need to be able to get audited on this. But we have to do controlling on data that comes from so many various sources, and where you really have to figure out how do I want to go about this, and where do we want to have this responsibility lie. It's moving towards the financial organization or the finance organization, because they're used to working with the audits and with this level of security or on the data. Where do we have it from, and is it the right data, and can we really rely on this before we get audited, and can we report on this to the larger group of investors and stakeholders? So it's pretty complex, and we're working with our existing customers right now on expanding this. We're giving webinars with some of our partners, and we see a huge interest from this in terms of, okay, how can we actually get together and work on this and take it to the next level? So really interesting focus area for us too. And then of course there are the focus on integrations. As you just said, Morten, we are kind of in the middle between what some companies used to do in terms of, okay, we're sending out spreadsheets with our Outlook mails, and then we try to collect all this data and we try to figure out which one was the last version, or the really integrated solutions on the other hand. We come with a best of breed solution for a smaller scope, and we want to integrate more with the larger landscape of platforms that helps provide the assurance and the trust and the transparency that this is all about.
And where we really see a huge demand for this agility, and that's what the customers are asking for.
So these are the main focus areas. And if we jump to the next slide, then just to, unless you want to come with some questions now, Kasper?
Yes, like maybe we should, there's just one question, so maybe you can include this before we finalize the presentation. How much is your net retention rate potential for 2023 with the customers you have now? And as you have here on the slide, the high net retention rate is important for you, and you have had that in the previous years. So maybe you can, I know you don't guide on this, but maybe you can just give us some ballpark numbers of what you think about this and your potential of the current customer base.
Yeah, I don't know if we can give ballpark numbers, but we are happy to comment on it. And of course, we do our very best to ensure that we keep as many of our customers as possible. And as Rikke just mentioned, there are a huge potential for many of our customers, both for them to benefit more from Impero and for us to sell more users to them. So of course that's a big focus also in 2023, and something we will continue to focus on. So we still expect that we will continue with strong net revenue retention numbers. But that said, it's also, and as we also communicated in connection with our last presentation, that customers are also looking into, do we have some systems that we don't get the full utilization out of, and so, and not that it's something that has a significant impact on us, but in environment.
We need to make sure that we keep the focus on having the really high level of customer support that helps our customers get the benefit of Impero.
Yeah.
And also, of course, make sure that we tell them about all the expansion opportunities and how they can get even better with Impero. And it lies on our shoulders to at least maintain the current level.
All right.
Yeah, and we continue, or we expect that to continue.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Morten and Rikke. I will finalize this with the comments here. So thank you very much for being here today.